Admiral Zeftar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking at the three small vessels that had appeared on his sensors. His ship was 10 times bigger than all 3 human ships put together. Behind him, a whole fleet of Imperial warships waited in perfect formation. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small planet. The Admiral's 4 eyes glowed red with excitement. After 50 years of service to the Galactic Empire, he was about to make first contact with a new species. This was the moment he had trained for his entire life. The Empire had rules for this. Very old rules that had worked for thousands of years. Send the standard message, he ordered his communications officer. His voice was deep and scary, the kind of voice that made enemies surrender before any fighting started. The communications officer pressed several buttons on his control panel. The message went out in 17 different galactic languages. It was the same message the Empire had used for 10,000 years. The message was simple and clear: surrender now or be destroyed. The Admiral waited for the usual response. Most species begged for mercy. Some tried to run away. A few foolish ones tried to fight. But they all understood what the Empire wanted. They all knew they had no choice but to obey. Minutes passed. The Admiral's tail swished with impatience. His species, the hegemony, were not used to waiting. They were the rulers of half the galaxy. When they spoke, others listened immediately. "Admiral," the communications officer said, his voice shaking slightly. "We are getting a response." "Good," the Admiral said. "Put it on the main screen. Let me see them beg." The screen flickered to life. Instead of seeing a terrified alien leader, the Admiral saw a human woman with short brown hair. She was sitting in what looked like a very simple chair. Behind her, the Admiral could see other humans walking around, talking and laughing. None of them looked scared. The woman smiled at the screen. "Hello there. I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Friendship. We got your message, but I think there might be some confusion here. We don't really do the whole bowing down thing. Would you like to grab some coffee instead? We make really good coffee." The Admiral stared at the screen. His mouth fell open. In his 50 years of service, no one had ever responded like this. He looked around his bridge. His officers were staring too. Everyone seemed confused. What did she say? The Admiral asked his communications officer. She invited us for coffee, sir." "What is coffee?" "I don't know, sir. It's not in our language database." The Admiral looked back at the screen. The human woman was still smiling. She seemed to be waiting for an answer. This was not how first contact was supposed to work. The Admiral pulled out his copy of the First Contact Manual. It was a thick book with 50,000 years of Empire wisdom inside. He flipped through the pages quickly. Chapter 1, Demand Surrender. Chapter 2, Accept Surrender. Chapter 3, What to do if they run away. Chapter 4, What to do if they fight back. Nowhere in the manual was there anything about coffee. Nowhere did it mention what to do if the new species seemed happy to see you. "Sir," another officer said. "They're sending another message." The screen flickered again. This time a different human appeared. This one was a man with a big smile and gray hair. "Hey, we're still here." "We brought sandwiches too. Peanut butter and jelly. Classic Earth food. You guys eat food, right?" The Admiral felt a pain in his head. This was getting worse. Now they were talking about something called peanut butter and jelly. Were these weapons? Code words for some kind of attack? "Sir," his science officer said, "our scanners show their ships are not armed." "What do you mean not armed?" "No weapons, sir. No shields either. They have some kind of energy source we don't recognize, but it doesn't look like a weapon." The Admiral looked at the human ships again. They were small and white, with strange blue markings on the sides. They looked nothing like warships. They looked more like... The Admiral didn't know what they looked like. Nothing in his experience. "Maybe it's a trick," he said to himself. "Maybe they're trying to make us think they're harmless." He pressed a button on his chair. "This is Admiral Zeftar of the Galactic Empire. You will surrender immediately or face destruction. This is your final warning." The screen showed the first human woman again. She looked confused now. "Destruction? Why would you want to destroy us? We just met. That seems really unfriendly. Are you having a bad day? Sometimes I get grumpy when I haven't had my coffee." "There's that word again," the Admiral muttered. "Coffee?" His communications officer was typing frantically on his computer. "Sir, I'm trying to find any mention of this coffee in our databases. So far, nothing. Keep looking," the Admiral ordered. He was starting to feel frustrated. The Empire had conquered thousands of species. None of them had ever confused him like this. The human woman on the screen was talking to someone off camera. The Admiral could hear her saying something about really tall aliens and anger management issues. Then she turned back to the screen. "Listen, Mr. What was your name again?" "Admiral Zeftar of the Hegemony Council, Supreme Commander of the Eastern Fleet, Destroyer of Worlds, Fear of the..." "Okay, that's a really long title. Can I just call you Zeph?" "I'm Sarah. Nice to meet you, Zeph. Now, about this destruction thing. That sounds really serious. Have you tried talking about your problems instead of destroying things? It works much better." The Admiral's eye twitched. No one had ever called him Zeph before. No one had ever suggested he talk about his problems. He was the destroyer of worlds. He didn't have problems. He was the problem that other people had. "You don't understand," he said slowly. "We are the Galactic Empire. We have conquered 10,000 worlds. We have technology beyond your understanding. We have fleets that can block out the stars." Sarah nodded. "That sounds really impressive. You must have worked very hard for that. But why do you want to conquer us? We're not bothering anyone. We're just exploring, meeting new people. Kind of like what you're doing, I guess, except friendlier." The Admiral felt his head pain getting worse. He looked at his officers. They all looked as confused as he felt. This was not going according to the manual. The manual said that after the first warning, species either surrendered or attacked. They didn't ask questions about his feelings. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "what are your orders?" The Admiral stared at the screen. The human woman was still smiling. Behind her, he could see other humans doing normal things. One was reading a book. Another was playing with what looked like a small animal. A third was eating something that made crunching sounds. These humans didn't look like warriors. They didn't look like they understood how dangerous this situation was. They acted like meeting the most powerful military force in the galaxy was just another normal day. "Give me a moment," the Admiral said. He needed to think. He needed to figure out what the humans were really planning. Because no species could be this friendly and innocent. It had to be a trick. It had to be. Admiral Zeftar paced back and forth on his bridge. 3 hours had passed since the humans had offered him coffee, and he still didn't understand what was happening. He had called an emergency meeting with his best officers. They sat around a large table in his command room, looking just as confused as he felt. "This has to be psychological warfare," said Commander Vext, his second in command. "No species is this friendly to the Empire. They must be trying to confuse us before they attack. But our scanners still show no weapons," reported Science Officer Clune. "Their ships are clean. No missiles, no energy cannons, no particle beams, nothing." "Then how do they plan to fight us?" asked the Admiral. "Maybe they don't plan to fight," said Communications Officer Berth quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She was young for an Imperial officer, only 30 years old. Maybe they really just want to be friends. The table went silent. The idea was so strange that no one knew how to respond. In the Empire, friendship was a weakness. You had allies and you had enemies. There was nothing in between. "Impossible," Commander Vext said firmly. "No species survives in space by being friendly. The galaxy is dangerous. You need weapons. You need fear. You need strength." Admiral Zeftar nodded. The commander was right. It was basic military thinking. But the humans didn't seem to understand basic military thinking. "Sir," Communications Officer Berth said, "they're sending another message." "Put it on screen," the Admiral ordered. The screen showed the human woman again. Sarah. She was holding a white cup with steam coming out of it. Next to her stood the gray-haired man from before and a new human. This one was younger, with dark skin and a big smile. "Hi again, Zeph," Sarah said, waving at the camera. "We've been talking and we realized you might not know what coffee is. So we made a video to show you." The younger human stepped forward. "Hello, I'm Dr. James Williams and this is my friend Captain Rodriguez. We're going to explain coffee and why it's so great." Captain Rodriguez held up a small brown bean. "This is a coffee bean. It grows on Earth. We grind it up, add hot water, and it makes a drink that helps us wake up in the morning. It tastes good and makes us happy." Dr. Williams nodded. "Coffee is very important to human culture. We drink it when we work, when we meet friends, when we need to think about problems. It brings people together." Sarah took a sip from her cup. "We thought you might like to try some. We could meet somewhere neutral, maybe on one of those asteroids nearby." We'll bring coffee, you bring whatever you like to drink. The Admiral stared at the screen. They were still offering him drinks, even after he had threatened to destroy them. Even after showing them his massive fleet. They wanted to have a peaceful meeting over beverages. This is definitely psychological warfare, Commander Vexith said. They're trying to make us lower our guard. But Admiral Zeftar wasn't so sure anymore. He had been watching the humans carefully. Their body language didn't look like they were lying. They seemed genuinely happy to meet new people. It was the strangest thing he had ever seen. Show them our strength, he decided. Maybe they don't understand how powerful we are. He ordered his fleet to move into attack formation. 50 massive warships spread out around the human vessels. Each ship was armed with weapons that could crack moons. Together they had enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Then he activated the fear projectors. These were special devices that created holographic images designed to terrify enemy species. The images showed the Empire's greatest victories. Planets burning, cities falling, entire civilizations bowing before Imperial might. The holograms filled the space between the fleets. They showed the Empire's 10,000 conquered worlds. They showed the billions of beings who served the Empire. They showed the massive factories that built more warships every day. Admiral Zeftar felt proud as he watched the display. No species could see this and not understand their situation. The humans would finally realize they had no choice but to surrender. He waited for their response. Surely now they would be afraid. Surely now they would beg for mercy. The screen flickered on again. All 3 humans were back and they were applauding. Wow, Dr. Williams said, clapping his hands. That was amazing. How did you make those pictures so real? The special effects were incredible. Captain Rodriguez nodded enthusiastically. Your technology is really impressive. Those ships are beautiful. Did you design them yourselves? Sarah was taking notes on a small device. The level of organization is incredible. 10,000 worlds? That must be so much work to manage. How do you keep track of everything? Do you use computers? We love computers. Admiral Zeftar felt his eye twitch again. They thought it was entertainment. They were impressed by his show of force but not afraid. They were asking technical questions like they were tourists visiting a museum. They're not getting it, Commander Vexith said. They still don't understand. Maybe we need to be clearer, the Admiral said. He activated his personal communicator and spoke directly to the humans. Those images were not entertainment, he said in his most serious voice. They were warnings. We have destroyed civilizations. We have burned worlds. We have conquered species far more advanced than yours. You should be afraid. Sarah looked confused. Why should we be afraid? You haven't heard us. You've been very polite, actually. A little dramatic, maybe, but polite. Dramatic? The Admiral repeated. Well, yes, Dr. Williams said. All the big speeches about destroying worlds and being feared across the galaxy. It's very theatrical. Do all your species like drama? We have plays and movies on Earth. Maybe we could share some with you. Captain Rodriguez leaned forward. Speaking of sharing, we brought more than just coffee. We have chocolate, pizza, ice cream, and something called Netflix. Do you guys like stories? We have thousands of stories. The Admiral looked at his officers. None of them knew what any of those things were. Chocolate, pizza, ice cream, Netflix. Were these more weapons with strange names? Sir, Science Officer Clun said quietly. I'm detecting strange energy readings from their ships. But it's not weapons. It looks like entertainment systems and food preparation equipment. Food preparation? The Admiral asked. They seem to have full kitchens on their ships, and libraries, and recreational facilities. Their ships are designed for comfort, not war. Admiral Zeftar looked back at the screen. The humans were still talking excitedly about sharing their food and stories. They were treating first contact with the Empire like a neighborhood barbecue. This is impossible, he muttered. How did they get to space without weapons? How did they survive? How did they build ships? Maybe, Communications Officer Berth said carefully. Maybe they're the first species that never needed to fight their way to the stars. The thought was so alien that it made the Admiral's head hurt. Every species the Empire had ever met had fought wars to reach space. They had to fight other species on their home planet. They had to fight pirates and raiders in space. They had to fight for resources and territory. But what if there was a species that had skipped all that? What if there was a species that had reached the stars through cooperation instead of conquest? Sir, his tactical officer said. What are your orders? Admiral Zeftar looked at the happy humans on his screen. He looked at his confused officers. He looked at his massive fleet, designed to inspire fear, being admired like a work of art. For the first time in his 50-year career, Admiral Zeftar had no idea what to do next. 2 days later, Admiral Zeftar found himself doing something he had never done before in his entire military career. He was accepting an invitation to dinner. The humans had been very patient with him. After his display of imperial might had failed to frighten them, they had simply continued being friendly. They had sent more messages explaining their culture, showing him pictures of Earth, and asking polite questions about his species. Finally, Captain Sarah Chen had made a suggestion that his officers couldn't find any flaws with. "Why don't you come visit our ship?" she had said. "You can bring your guards, scan everything, check for weapons. We just want to show you how humans live. Maybe it will help us understand each other better." Now Admiral Zeftar was putting on his formal armor and preparing to board a human vessel. Commander Vexith and 4 security guards would come with him. All of them carried weapons and energy shields. "Just in case, remember?" he told his boarding party as they climbed into their shuttle. "This could still be a trap. Stay alert. These humans might look harmless, but they got to space somehow. They must have hidden strengths." The human ship was called the UES Friendship. As their shuttle approached, Admiral Zeftar studied it carefully. It was much smaller than his flagship, but it looked well built. The hull was white and blue with strange symbols painted on the sides. Large windows showed light coming from inside. "It looks more like a passenger ship than a warship," Commander Vexith observed. "Exactly," the Admiral replied, "which makes it more suspicious." They docked with the human ship and stepped through the airlock. Admiral Zeftar was ready for anything. Weapons, traps, battle stations, soldiers waiting in ambush. Instead, he found Captain Sarah Chen standing in a hallway decorated with colorful pictures. She was wearing simple blue clothes, not armor. Behind her stood Dr. Williams and Captain Rodriguez, both smiling and unarmed. "Welcome aboard the Friendship," Sarah said cheerfully. "Thanks for coming. I know this must be strange for you." The Admiral looked around suspiciously. The hallway was clean and bright. Plants grew in small containers along the walls. Soft music played from hidden speakers. It felt more like a home than a spaceship. "Where are your soldiers?" he asked. "Soldiers?" Sarah looked confused. "We don't have soldiers. We're explorers, not fighters. Come on, let me show you around." She led them deeper into the ship. The Admiral and his guards followed carefully, scanning everything for hidden dangers. But all they found were more plants, more colorful pictures, and humans doing normal activities. In one room, humans were reading books and playing games. In another, someone was cooking food that smelled amazing. In a third room, humans were exercising on strange machines while watching moving pictures on a large screen. "This is our recreation area," Sarah explained. "People need to have fun, especially on long space trips. That's our gym, our library, and our entertainment center." "Entertainment center?" Commander Vex asked. "For watching movies and playing games," Dr. Williams said. "Want to see? We have some great shows about space exploration." The Admiral was starting to feel dizzy. This ship had more recreational facilities than most Imperial space stations. Where were the weapon systems? Where were the battle stations? Where was the military equipment? "Here's our kitchen," Sarah said, opening a door to reveal a large room full of strange devices and wonderful smells. "Chef Martinez is making pizza tonight. It's one of our most popular foods." A human in a white hat waved at them from behind a counter. "Hello, want to try some?" "It's almost ready." "What is pizza?" the Admiral asked weakly. "Bread with cheese and sauce and other good things on top," Captain Rodriguez explained. "It's delicious. Very popular on Earth." The Admiral's security scanner beeped. He looked down at it, expecting to see weapons. Instead, it showed food preparation equipment. Ovens, refrigerators, mixing devices, all designed for cooking, not fighting. "Your ship is a restaurant?" Commander Vexith asked in disbelief. Sarah laughed. "Not just a restaurant. We have workshops, laboratories, sleeping quarters, meeting rooms. Everything we need for long-term space exploration." "Want to see the bridge?" The bridge was the most confusing room yet. Instead of weapon controls and tactical displays, it had navigation charts, communication equipment, and scientific instruments. The captain's chair looked comfortable rather than threatening. Windows showed the starfield outside. "This is where we control the ship," Sarah explained. "Navigation, communications, life support, that sort of thing." "Where are your weapons controls?" the Admiral asked. We don't have weapons, Dr. Williams said. What would we need weapons for? To fight, Commander Vexith said. To defend yourselves. To conquer enemies. The humans looked at each other with confusion. Why would we want to conquer anyone? Sarah asked. That sounds awful. We prefer to make friends. But how do you protect yourselves? The Admiral demanded. Space is dangerous. There are pirates, raiders, hostile species. We haven't met any pirates yet, Captain Rodriguez said. Everyone we've met has been very nice. Well, except for you guys with all the threatening, but you seem nice too once you calm down. The Admiral sat down heavily in a nearby chair. His worldview was crumbling. Everything he knew about space travel, about survival, about civilization, was being challenged by these impossible humans. Let me understand, he said slowly. You flew into space without weapons. You explore the galaxy without fear. You meet strange aliens and invite them for dinner. How are you still alive? Well, Sarah said thoughtfully, we're pretty good at fixing things. And we're nice to people. And we share our food. Most problems can be solved with good engineering and friendly conversation. As if to prove her point, an alarm suddenly started beeping somewhere in the ship. Instead of battle stations being called, Admiral Zeftar heard a human voice over the intercom saying, Hey, Sarah. The coffee machine is making weird noises again. Excuse me for a minute, Sarah said apologetically. She picked up a small device and spoke into it. Try turning it off and on again. If that doesn't work, hit it gently with a wrench. A few seconds later, the voice came back. That worked, thanks. No problem, Sarah replied, putting the device away. Sorry about that. Where were we? Admiral Zeftar stared at her. You fixed a machine problem by hitting it with a wrench? Sometimes that works, Dr. Williams said. We call it percussive maintenance. Very useful technique. Commander Vext leaned over to whisper in the Admiral's ear. Sir, these humans are either the most dangerous species in the galaxy or the most innocent. I can't tell which. The Admiral was starting to think they were both. The humans had somehow created a technology that worked without violence. They had built ships without weapons that could cross interstellar space safely. They had developed a society based on cooperation rather than conquest. It should have been impossible. But here they were. Sir, one of his security guards said quietly, the humans are inviting us to stay for dinner. The food does smell very good. Admiral Zeftar looked around the bridge. Happy humans working together. No weapons in sight. Problem solved with wrenches and friendly conversation. All right, he said finally. We'll stay for dinner. But keep your scanners active. I still don't understand how any of this is possible. Great, Sarah said happily. You're going to love pizza. And wait until you try ice cream for dessert. The Admiral had no idea what ice cream was, but he was starting to think he wanted to find out. News traveled fast in the galaxy. Within a week, every civilized species had heard about the humans who had confused the mighty Galactic Empire with offers of coffee and pizza. The story spread through quantum communication networks, reaching even the most distant colonies. On Vega Prime, the reptilian Saurians watched news broadcasts showing Imperial officers learning to play something called poker. On the methane moons of Titan, the gaseous ethereals shared translated videos of humans teaching Admiral Zeftar how to make sandwiches. In the crystal caves of Rigel, the silicon-based crystallites vibrated with what their species considered laughter. The Empire had been the galaxy's greatest fear for 10,000 years. Their black ships brought terror to every corner of known space. Parents told their children scary stories about Imperial raiders. Entire civilizations built their defenses around the threat of Imperial invasion. But now, those same terrifying Imperial officers were being seen on galactic news feeds wearing something called baseball caps and learning to operate human cooking equipment. The change had started small. Admiral Zeftar had stayed for dinner on the human ship and discovered that pizza was, in his own words, surprisingly delicious. The next day, he had invited the humans to visit his flagship for what he called cultural exchange. The humans had arrived with backpacks full of strange Earth items. They had brought games, food, music, books, and something called a tablet computer, loaded with what they called movies. Within hours, the most feared warship in the galaxy had been transformed into something resembling a community center. Dr. Williams had fixed a problem with the ship's main engine that Imperial engineers had been struggling with for months. His solution involved something he called a bigger hammer and a technique he described as hitting it until it works properly. The Empire's most advanced technology, had been repaired using what humans called common sense. Captain Rodriguez had introduced the crew to Earth music, which led to the bizarre sight of Imperial warriors learning to dance to something called rock and roll. The ship's communication logs from that day showed multiple requests for more music with good beat for moving body rhythmically. Captain Sarah Chen had spent the day asking questions about how the Empire worked, why they conquered other species, and whether anyone had ever tried just asking nicely instead of threatening. Her innocent curiosity had led to several Imperial officers having what humans called existential crises. But the real change happened when the humans introduced something called social media. It's how we stay connected with friends and family, Sarah had explained to Admiral Zeftar. You take pictures of interesting things and share them with people you care about. The Admiral had been confused by the concept at first. The Empire had communication networks, but they were for military orders and official business. The idea of sharing pictures of your dinner or your pet seemed pointless. Then Lieutenant Kekstar from the engine room had taken a picture of himself wearing a human baseball cap while eating pizza. He had shared it with his friends on other ships as a joke. The picture had been forwarded to other friends, who had shared it with their friends, who had shared it across the entire Imperial fleet. Within days, Imperial officers throughout the galaxy were taking pictures of themselves with human food, human games, and human entertainment. The hashtag #DahmerHumanThings became popular across the Imperial communication network. The change in public opinion was dramatic. Species that had lived in terror of the Empire for generations were suddenly seeing Imperial officers as normal people, people who liked good food and funny movies and games with friends. The Andromedan Council, which had been planning a desperate last stand against Imperial expansion, called an emergency meeting to discuss whether they still needed their massive defense fleet. The warrior clans of Betelgeuse, who had spent centuries preparing for glorious battle against the Empire, found themselves wondering if they could just invite the Imperials over for their traditional honor feast instead. Even the Empire's own subject species were confused. On conquered worlds throughout the galaxy, Imperial governors were receiving strange requests from local populations. They wanted to try human pizza. They wanted to learn human games. They wanted to watch human movies. Governor Thexel of the mining world Kepler 442b sent a confused report to his superiors. The local population is no longer afraid of us. They keep asking if we know how to make something called ice cream. Morale among both Imperial staff and local workers has increased by 300%. Production is up. Rebellion activity has dropped to 0. The humans have somehow made our job easier by making everyone happy. I don't understand how this is possible, but I'm not complaining. Similar reports came in from across the Empire. Occupied worlds that had been trouble spots for decades were suddenly peaceful and productive. The secret seemed to be treating people like friends instead of subjects. Admiral Zeftar found himself in the strange position of being the most popular officer in Imperial history. His daily reports from the human encounter were being read by billions of beings across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to know what the humans would do next. The latest development had been the most shocking yet. The humans had fixed the Admiral's personal shuttle, which had been making strange noises for months. They had used something called duct tape and zip ties along with several tools that Imperial engineers had never seen before. Not only had they fixed the shuttle, but they had somehow made it run better than when it was new. Imperial engineers were studying the human modifications, trying to understand how such simple techniques could be so effective. They don't follow our rules, Chief Engineer Plexon had reported. They don't use proper procedures. They just look at a problem and fix it in the most direct way possible. It's like they think machines are supposed to be easy to repair. The humans had also introduced the Imperial crew to something called movie night. Every evening now, beings throughout the fleet would gather to watch human entertainment on large screens while eating human snacks and discussing the stories. The most popular movies were ones showing humans working together to solve problems. The Imperial officers were fascinated by stories where conflicts were resolved through cooperation rather than conquest. They have a saying, Admiral Zeftar had reported to his superiors. It goes, "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" They use this phrase for everything. Broken machines, complicated problems, difficult relationships. Somehow it works more often than it should. The phrase had become popular throughout the Imperial fleet. Have you tried turning it off and on again? Was now being used by Imperial officers to solve everything from engine problems to diplomatic disputes. But the biggest change was still coming. Word had reached Imperial command that the Emperor himself was traveling to meet these strange humans. The most powerful being in the galaxy wanted to see for himself what had caused such a dramatic shift in Imperial culture. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched the news feeds and waited to see what would happen when the Emperor met the humans who had accidentally revolutionized the Empire with kindness and snacks. The galaxy held its breath and waited to see if the Age of Fear was finally ending. Emperor Vaxthor the Terrible had ruled the Galactic Empire for 200 years. He was 8 feet tall, had 6 arms, and could breathe fire when angry. His voice could shatter glass. His presence could make grown warriors faint with fear. Entire species had surrendered just from seeing his picture. He was not happy. The Emperor's massive dreadnought, the Death Shadow, dropped out of hyperspace near the Sol system with a fleet of 1,000 warships. Each ship was painted in the Empire's colors, black and red, the colors of conquest and blood. The fleet formed a perfect battle formation that had taken centuries to perfect. The Emperor stood on his command bridge, all 6 arms crossed in anger. Around him, his most elite guards waited for orders. These were the Emperor's personal soldiers, the ones who had helped him conquer half the galaxy. They had never known defeat. "Where is Admiral Zeftar?" the Emperor demanded in his terrible voice. "Sir," his communications officer said nervously, "Admiral Zeftar he's having lunch with the humans." "Lunch?" The Emperor's roar shook the entire bridge. Small objects fell from tables. Several junior officers hid behind their control panels. "I come here to find out why my Eastern Fleet has stopped conquering worlds and my Admiral is having lunch?" "Yes, sir. He says the humans make something called grilled cheese sandwiches, and they're very good." The Emperor felt his fire-breathing organs heating up with rage. He had received Admiral Zeftar's reports for the past month. Each report had been stranger than the last. His most feared admiral was apparently learning to play human games, watching human entertainment, and sharing recipes with enemy aliens. "Get him on the communicator. Now." The screen flickered to life, and the Emperor saw something that made his 6 heart stop beating for a moment. Admiral Zeftar, the destroyer of worlds, the fear of the galaxy, was sitting at a small table with 3 humans. He was wearing something blue on his head and holding a sandwich in his claws. "My Emperor," Admiral Zeftar said happily. "Perfect timing. You have to try these grilled cheese sandwiches. They're amazing. Oh, and this is my friend Sarah. Sarah, say hello to Emperor Vaxthor." The human woman waved at the screen with a big smile. "Hi there. Nice to meet you. Love the ship, by the way. Very impressive. Are you here for the barbecue?" The Emperor stared. In 200 years of ruling, no one had ever called him nice to meet you. No one had ever complimented his ship in a friendly way. No one had ever mentioned barbecue in his presence. "What?" the Emperor said slowly. "Is a barbecue? It's when you cook food outside over fire," Dr. Williams explained cheerfully. "We thought it would be fun to have a big party. All the ship's crews, humans, and Imperials together. We have burgers, hot dogs, corn on the cob, and something called s'mores for dessert. We set up on that big asteroid over there," Captain Rodriguez added, pointing out the window. "Plenty of room for everyone. Want to come? We have extra food." The Emperor looked out his own window and saw something impossible. The asteroid was covered with lights, tables, and cooking fires. Hundreds of Imperial officers were sitting with humans, eating food and talking. Some were playing games. Others were laughing at something on a large screen. His most feared warriors were having a picnic. "Admiral Zeftar," the Emperor said in his most dangerous voice, "report to my ship immediately. We need to discuss your recent behavior." "Oh, sure thing," the Admiral said. "Mind if I bring some friends? The humans are really excited to meet you. They've heard so much about you." Before the Emperor could object, the transmission ended. He stood on his bridge, feeling confused and angry. Nothing was going according to plan. He had come here to restore order to his fleet, to remind everyone why the Empire was feared across the galaxy. Instead, his soldiers were at a barbecue. An hour later, Admiral Zeftar arrived on the Emperor's ship. But he didn't come alone. With him were Sarah, Dr. Williams, Captain Rodriguez, and several other humans carrying bags and boxes. "Emperor Vaxthor," Sarah said as soon as she saw him. "Wow, you're even more impressive in person. Is it true you can breathe fire?" "That's so cool." The Emperor tried to look threatening. He drew himself up to his full 8-foot height and glared down at the tiny human. But instead of being afraid, she seemed excited. "We brought presents," Dr. Williams announced, opening one of the boxes. "Cookies, coffee, some books we thought you might like, and a tablet loaded with our best movies." "Movies?" the Emperor asked despite himself. "Stories told with moving pictures," Captain Rodriguez explained. "We have action movies, comedies, dramas, science fiction. Something for everyone." The Emperor looked at Admiral Zeftar. "Admiral, what has happened to my fleet?" "They're happy, sir," the Admiral replied. "For the first time in their military careers, they're actually happy. Morale is higher than it's ever been. They work better together. They solve problems faster. The humans have shown us a better way to live." "Better way?" The Emperor's voice rose dangerously. "We are conquerors. We are the terror of the galaxy. We don't need to be happy." Sarah looked concerned. "Why don't you want to be happy?" "Being happy is great. It makes everything better." "Because," the Emperor said through gritted teeth, "fear is power. When people are afraid of you, they obey you. That's how empires work." "But that sounds exhausting," Dr. Williams said. "Always having to be scary, always having to threaten people. Don't you ever want to just relax and have fun?" The Emperor stared at him. Relax, fun? These were not concepts that existed in Imperial training. "Here," Sarah said, pulling something out of a bag. "We brought you a present." She handed him a small object. It was soft and warm and had a friendly face. "It's a teddy bear, for when you need a hug." The Emperor looked at the teddy bear. No one had ever given him a gift before. No one had ever thought he might need a hug. In 200 years of absolute power, no one had ever been kind to him just because they wanted to. He felt something strange happening in his chest. A warm feeling he didn't recognize. "What is this emotion I'm experiencing?" he asked quietly. "Happiness," Captain Rodriguez said with a smile. "It's nice, isn't it?" Over the next few hours, something incredible happened. The humans treated the Emperor like a normal person. They shared their food with him. They showed him their games. They asked him about his life, his interests, his favorite foods. No one had ever asked the Emperor about his favorite foods before. They taught him to play something called checkers, which he won easily because of his superior tactical mind. But instead of being intimidated by his victory, the humans congratulated him and asked to learn his strategy. They showed him movies about friendship, courage, and hope. They explained human concepts like democracy, where people work together to make decisions instead of following one supreme ruler. And slowly, gradually, the Emperor began to understand what had happened to his fleet. The humans hadn't conquered his soldiers with weapons or threats. They had conquered them with kindness. They had shown them that life could be better than just following orders and inspiring fear. By the end of the day, Emperor Vaxthor the Terrible was sitting around a campfire on an asteroid, roasting something called marshmallows and listening to humans tell stories about Earth. "This is pleasant," he admitted to Admiral Zeftar. "I had forgotten that existence could be pleasant." "The humans have that effect on people," the Admiral replied. "They make you remember what you're fighting for instead of just what you're fighting against." 3 months later, the galaxy had changed completely. The Galactic Empire still existed, but it was no longer an empire of conquest. It had become an empire of cooperation. Instead of demanding tribute from conquered worlds, they offered assistance and friendship. The Emperor had retired from active rule to write his memoirs. His book, titled "How Did They Defeat Us with Friendship and Snacks?" became the most popular autobiography in galactic history. The new imperial motto, suggested by the humans and approved by popular vote across all member worlds, was simple: "Have you tried being nice about it?" And across the galaxy, whenever conflicts arose between species or worlds or individuals, people would remember the humans who had ended the age of fear with coffee and conversation. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most powerful weapon was simply being kind, and it turned out that everyone, even terrifying emperors, just wanted someone to share a meal with and ask how their day was going. The humans had given the galaxy something it didn't know it was missing: the knowledge that they could all be friends.